2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I love doing math. I love doing math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I love doing math. I love doing math. Hey, math is so easy to me. So easy. Count it up like.
Hi everybody, welcome to today's lesson where we will continue talking about algebra. Our focus today is on equations that contain division. So let's review an important concept. You now know that when we solve algebraic equations, we use the inverse operation or the opposite operation to isolate variables. Like I said, today, all of our problems will contain division, and we know that the inverse operation or the opposite operation of division is multiplication. Let's just quickly review why that is. If I were to take a number, let's say 8, and divide it by 2, I would get 4 because 8 divided by 2 is 4. However, if I were to do the opposite of division and multiply it by the same number, so instead of dividing by 2, I'm multiplying by 2, 4 times 2 equals 8. So I would be left right where I started, okay? Dividing by 2 and multiplying by 2 are opposite operations, so they essentially cancel one another out to leave us with our starting number, in this case 8. Here's problem number 1. Y divided by 3 equals 9. Step 1 tells us to determine the variable we want to isolate. In this case, it's y. Step 2 tells us to use the inverse operation to isolate our variable. Well, our operation is division, so the inverse or the opposite of that will be multiplication. Instead of dividing by 3, we'll multiply by 3, and we'll do that to both sides. We know from what we just talked about that dividing by 3 and multiplying by 3 are opposite operations, so they cancel one another out and mean we are left with just y on the left side. On the right side, we need to find the product of 9 and 3, which is 27. So I think that y equals 27 is my final answer, but I don't know for sure until I've checked it. So instead of writing y divided by 3, I'll write 27 divided by 3. And if we've done this correctly, we should get 9. 27 divided by 3 does in fact equal 9. So y equals 27 is the correct answer. Let's look at number 2. X divided by 4 equals 6. Now this representation of division might look a little bit funny to you, but x over 4 is the same thing as x divided by 4 equals 6. This is just a different way to write a division problem. Personally, I prefer it to be written like this, so I'm going to rewrite it before I begin solving this equation. Let's look at step 1. Determine the variable we want to isolate. In this case, it is x. Step 2, use the inverse operation to isolate our variable. Instead of dividing by 4, I'll do the inverse operation, which is multiplying by 4. And I'll do that to the left side and the right side. We know that dividing by 4 and multiplying by 4 are opposite operations, therefore they cancel one another out, and we are just left with x on the left side. 6 times 4 equals 24, so I think my final answer is x equals 24. However, I need to move on to step 3 and check to make sure. Instead of writing x divided by 4, I'll write 24 divided by 4, and 24 divided by 4 does in fact equal 6. So I know that my answer, x equals 24, is correct. Okay, here's our third and final problem of the day. It contains decimals, but we can totally handle that. We'll follow the same 3 steps, even though there are decimals. All right, we need to first determine our variable that we want to isolate. In this case, it is m. Next, we need to do the inverse operation to isolate our variable. So instead of dividing by 3 2/10, I'm going to multiply by 3 2/10. We know that dividing by 3 2/10 and multiplying by 3 2/10 are inverse or opposite operations, so they will cancel one another out, and we are just left with m on the left side. 4 5/10 times 3 2/10 equals 14 4/10. And remember, you can use a calculator to support you. So I think that this is my final answer, but I'll move on to step 3 and check just to make sure. Instead of writing m divided by 3 2/10, I'll write 14 4/10 divided by 3 2/10, and that does in fact equal 4 5/10. So m equals 14 4/10 is my final answer. Here are those 3 steps that we've been using to solve our equations today. You might want to pause the video on this screen when you're doing your independent practice so that you can use these steps to guide you. Have fun!
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I love doing math. I love doing math. 1, 2, 3, 4.